Good morning, Brent Bears. I want to go back to September 29th, 2006. That's when Petty Officer Michael Monsoor is United States Navy SEAL operating in Ramadi, Iraq. Monsoor is standing on a roof in Ramadi, and he's standing in front of a doorway to this roof. He has two Navy SEAL teammates lying in the sniper-prone position next to him. They've already taken AK-47 fire and a rocket-propelled grenade, but they're not exactly sure where the enemy is. There's a bit of a lull in the fighting. Insurgents have blocked off the streets of Ramadi, and there's someone on the loudspeaker in the town mosque yelling, "Kill the Americans!" As Monsoor and his team are looking for the next attack, an insurgent from an unknown location throws a grenade up on the roof. It hits Monsoor in the chest, and it falls to his feet. Due to the length of the throw, there's no opportunity to pick it up and throw it back. He has only a split second to make a decision. He can leap through the doorway behind him and save himself, but if he does, his two teammates lying on the roof will surely die. Monsoor yells, "Grenade!" But instead of jumping backward to save himself, he jumps forward, chest first, onto the grenade. It detonates. 30 minutes later, 25-year-old Michael Monsoor is dead. His two teammates lying on the roof receive only minor injuries because Monsoor's body muffled the blast. One of the survivors said at Monsoor's funeral, "Mikey looked death in the face that day and said, 'You will not take my friends, I will go in their stead.'" I've never seen a United States president cry until April of 2008. That's when President George W. Bush invited Monsoor's parents into the East Room of the White House to give them their son's Medal of Honor posthumously. The president couldn't even get through the citation without breaking down. Since then, Monsoor's high school in Garden Grove, California, built a new stadium. They named it Michael A. Monsoor Memorial Stadium. The golden trident insignia that the SEALs wear dominates the 50-yard line. January 2019, just outside of San Diego, California, the United States Navy commissioned the USS Michael Monsoor, the newest guided missile destroyer in the fleet, Zumwalt class. This is Monsoor's mother, Sally, being escorted onto the ship, named in honor of her fallen son. Now, why did they do this? Because Michael Monsoor literally sacrificed himself to save his friends. There's no greater love than to sacrifice yourself to save your friends, said Jesus of Nazareth before he went to the cross. Michael Monsoor sacrificed himself to save his friends. The question is, would anyone sacrifice himself to save you? And the answer is, someone already has. His name is Jesus of Nazareth. But in today's culture, a lot of people don't think the story's true. They think it's invented. It was written down by religious people. We know religious people embellish things. How can we believe such a thing? And it's got miracles in it. It's got a resurrection. How many in here have seen somebody rise from the dead? Yeah, neither have I. Yet the entire Christian worldview is based on believing something that none of us have ever seen. How rational is that? Well, I actually think it's easy to show that Christianity is true. You only need to answer 4 questions in the affirmative to show that Christianity is true. In other words, if you investigate these 4 questions, I think you'll realize that the answer to these 4 questions is yes. And if the answer to these 4 questions is yes, then Christianity's true. What are the 4 questions? Here are the 4 questions. Now that is some pretty grooving music, isn't it? Yeah, that is actually from our TV show, which is on every Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. on Roku, NRB TV on Roku, or DirecTV channel 378. If you don't have Roku or DirecTV, you can watch it free on your iPhone if you go to and download our app, 2 words in the App Store, Cross-Examined. We also have radio every Saturday mornings at 10 a.m. Now, I know you're college students. You don't get up till the crack of noon on Saturday. So you're not going to listen to it then, but you can listen to it on iTunes because it is podcasted. And what we do is we present evidence for Christianity, and we cross-examine ideas against it. Now, why are these the 4 questions? Truth, God, miracles, and the New Testament. Does truth exist? Why is that important? Because you hear people say, as Professor Graff was just saying, that a lot of people will say, well, there's no truth. You got your truth. I got my truth. All truth is relative. We're going to deal with that question first, because if there's no truth, obviously Christianity can't be true. Of course, if there's no truth, then atheism can't be true either, or nothing can be true. In fact, if there was no truth, you wouldn't even be in college, right? What are you here to learn? Truth. So we're going to deal with that question first. Second question, does God exist? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if there's no God, but I hope to show you that there really is a theistic God. We're going to briefly look at 3 arguments for a theistic God. These arguments are taught in the Bible, but you don't need the Bible to know them. In fact, we're not even going to refer to the Bible as we look at point 2. The third question is, are miracles possible? Obviously, Christianity can't be true if miracles are not possible. But I hope to show you today that not only are miracles possible, but the greatest miracle in the Bible has already occurred, and even atheists admit the data for this miracle. We'll see that here this morning. Then the key question is the New Testament true? The New Testament doesn't have a prayer if there's no truth, no God, or no miracles. But if truth exists, if God exists, if miracles are possible, then we can see if the documents we call the New Testament documents are reliable enough to let us know if one particular event occurred from the ancient world. What would that event be? This is the interactive portion of the program. The resurrection. Because if Jesus rose from the dead, game over, Christianity's true. Of course, if he didn't rise from the dead, game over, it's false. In fact, Paul actually says, if Christ hasn't risen from the dead, your faith is in vain. So everything hinges on the resurrection. Now, I don't have time, actually, to go through all 4 points here today. We're going to do like point 1 and half of point 2. If you want to go further, the book's available on the book table. That book goes into a lot of detail. There's a DVD set you can get off our website. There's a newer book out there called Stealing from God, Why Atheists Need God to Make Their Case. I've noticed that when atheists are arguing there is no God, they actually have to steal aspects of reality from God in order to say he doesn't exist. In other words, they have to sit in God's lap to slap his face. Now, I want to point out that all the proceeds from the sale of the books up at the book table will go to feed needy children. Mine, okay? Just so you know. I got 3 sons, so I need some help. Actually, the entire PowerPoint presentation that I can't show you because I don't have time is available. Just text the word evidence to 44222. Text the word evidence, no quotes on it, just the word evidence to 44222. I'm going to send you this entire PowerPoint presentation in a PDF format. I'm also going to send you the first chapter of Stealing from God and some other free stuff, all right? Because we don't have time to go through all of this here this morning, so you can look at it at your leisure. So what we're going to do here today is just start here at point 1. Does truth exist? You guys ready to go? Are you ready to go? All right. Whenever you start talking about truth, you always have to start with Jack Nicholson. Right? Because Tom Cruise had him on the witness stand, and he said to him, Colonel, I want the truth. And Nicholson said, bears. He didn't say it that way. If he said it that way, the movie would have gone nowhere. You can't handle the truth. Here's how he said it.
I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
All right, let's try that again. I want the truth.
You can't handle the truth.
We got Jack Nicholson in the front row. Well, there's a lot of people that can't handle the truth. They're saying, you got your truth, I got my truth, all truth is relative. Well, if you don't get anything outside of what we talk about here today, this is going to be the most important thinking skill we're going to talk about. Look, I already had a master's degree, and I didn't know this to show you what a dimwit I was. Yet it's the most valuable thinking skill you can learn. And it's so simple to learn, and once you learn it, half of what you need to know to defend the Christian faith, you'll already know. Why? Because half the battle is avoiding what is false. Half the battle is trying to discover what's false, because if you can put aside what's false, then you can concentrate on what is really true. And the easiest way to show you this thinking skill is to give you an example of using it. If someone were to ever come up to you and say, there is no truth, you should ask that person a question. What should the question be? Yeah, if somebody says there's no truth, you're going to say, hey, is that true? Is it true that there's no truth? Because if it's true that there's no truth, the claim there is no truth can't be true, but it claims to be true. Did I say that right? Can everybody see that this is a self-defeating statement? What's a self-defeating statement? A self-defeating statement is a statement that doesn't meet its own standard. It would be like me saying I can't speak a word in English. If I were to say that, what would you say? Well, you just used English to say it. Now, here's the thinking skill. It's really simple. All you need to do is turn the claim on itself. Turn the claim on itself. So if somebody says there's no truth, you turn the claim on itself and you say, is that true? Self-defeating statements are easy to identify if you turn the claim on itself. So let's do a few more. If somebody says there's no truth, you're going to say, is that true? How about if somebody says all truth is relative? If you turn the claim on itself, what would you say to them? Is that a relative truth? No, it's an absolute truth. You're claiming it's absolutely true that all truth is relative. That's like saying I can't speak a word in English. How about if somebody says there are no absolutes? Is that an absolute? Or you might want to say, are you absolutely sure? Because it's an absolute truth claim. How about if somebody says it's true for you but not for me? That's one of my favorite ones. Well, Christianity is true for you, but Buddhism is true for me. How about if somebody says that? What do you say? This is also self-defeating. It's just a little bit more subtle. If somebody says it's true for you but not for me, say, hey, is that true for everybody? Because if true for you but not for me is true for everybody, then true for you but not for me can't be true because it's true for everybody. Did I say that right? I know that can give you intellectual constipation if you think about it long enough. Actually, it's self-defeating to say it's true for you but not for me. That'd be like, I guess you could put it this way. Suppose you're driving really fast down the highway. You're going 100 miles an hour. Cop pulls you over, knocks on the window. You put the glass down. He says, you were going 100 miles an hour. It's easy to get out of a ticket. You simply say, ha, that's true for you but not for me. And then you speed away. Can't give you a ticket if it's not true for you. No, if it's true you were going 100, that's true for all people at all times in all places when referring to you at that time. Just true. And by the way, it's true that Jesus rose from the dead regardless of what you believe about it. It's also true that if he didn't rise from the dead, he didn't, regardless of what you believe about it. You know, I talk to a lot of students and people in churches especially, and I say, do you believe Christianity is true? And they go, yeah. I go, why? You know what answer I get more than any other? Because I have faith. Is that a good answer? Does your faith change whether or not something's true? Do you have to believe something to make it true? Do you have to believe in gravity to stay on the ground? Do people who don't believe in gravity float away? Hey, look, there's another one. Hey, if you believe, you'll come back. No, that's not the way it works. You say, why is the Bible always talking about faith? Because there's two kinds of faith. There's belief that, and then there's belief in. Belief that is getting evidence that God exists, that Jesus rose from the dead, that the Bible's telling the truth. That's evidence. That's apologetics. That's what we're talking about now. But all the belief that in the world won't get your moral transgressions forgiven. For that, you got to go from belief that to belief in. You see, belief that is of the head. Belief in is not only of the head, but of the heart. Do you know James, the half-brother of Jesus, who wrote that little book in the New Testament called You guys are a sharp group this morning. Yes. He said even the demons believe that God exists, but they trembled. You know that demons know that God exists better than we do? They're in the spiritual realm, but they don't trust in him. They don't want to trust in him. We know this in relationships too, don't we? The difference between belief that and belief in. When I first met my wife 35 years ago, I got evidence that she would be a good wife, but all the evidence in the world didn't make her my wife. I had to take a step of trust in her to ask her to be my wife. And in a momentary lapse of judgment, she said yes. See, that's the difference between belief that and belief in. You can know that it's true and not trust in Jesus. In fact, the word we ought to be using is trust, because today faith makes it seem like you don't have any evidence. That's not the definition of faith. The definition of faith is trusting in what you have good evidence to believe is true. Trusting in what you have good evidence to believe is true. And there's really good evidence that Christianity's true. How about this? You hear this a lot. There's no truth in anything but science. You've probably heard this claim, right? If you turn the claim on itself, what would you say to somebody who says there's no truth in anything but science? Does that truth come from science? No, that's a philosophical claim. You can't prove that in a laboratory. In fact, you can't do science without philosophy. Science is built on philosophy. You can't read the Bible without philosophy. Philosophy undergirds everything we do. In fact, in the Stealing from God book, there's a chapter on science. The chapter title is this: Science doesn't say anything. Scientists do. You ever notice you get conflicting data on COVID? Yeah, why is that? Because science doesn't say a word. Scientists say things, and sometimes they don't have good data, or sometimes they're speculating, or sometimes they're interpreting the data wrongly, because science doesn't say a word. Scientists say things. Or how about this? You hear this a lot. You ought not judge. Right? What do you say to somebody who says you ought not judge? Then why are you judging me for judging? You say, wait a minute, Frank, time out. You're a Christian. Didn't Jesus say don't judge? Nope, never said it. Sure he did. He said it right in Matthew chapter 7, verse 1. All right, I know this is going to sound weird, but it's true. There are no verses in the Bible. There are no verses in the Bible. You think when Matthew's writing the Gospel of Matthew, he said, here's chapter 7, verse 1. No. When did we put the chapter and verse divisions in? About 500 years ago to help us navigate the text, which is important because it's a really long series of books. The problem is we tend to think that if it's got a number in front of it, we can take it out and make it say whatever we want. Jesus didn't stop at judge not. What did he say right after that? Judge not, lest you be judged by the same standard you judge others, you be judged by that standard. So before you try and take the speck out of your brother's eye, you hypocrite, which is a judgment, by the way, take the log out of your own eye first, then you'll be better able to help your brother. So this is not a command not to judge, it's actually a command on how to judge. Everybody makes judgments. Atheists make judgments. They judge there's no God. They judge Jesus didn't rise from the dead. There's no objective meaning to life. These are all judgments. The question isn't whether or not you can make judgments. The question is, are your judgments true? In John chapter 7, verse 24, Jesus says, stop judging by mere appearances and make a right judgment. Everybody makes judgments. You just got to make judgments without being judgmental. Now, we could spend more time on this issue of truth, but if you can get around your mind the idea that if you turn a claim on itself, you can identify what is false, you're going to save yourself a lot of pain and suffering. Why? Because if you start living by false principles, you're eventually going to smack up against reality, and it's going to hurt. So can everyone see that this statement right here, and all the others we've just been through, can everyone see that this statement shoots itself? Can everybody see that? Because if you can see that, then you understand that there is truth and you can know it. In fact, if somebody says you can't know truth, what are you going to say to him? How do you know that you can't know? Because that's a truth claim as well. All right, now, I wish we had more time to spend on this. We don't. But let me just add one other point to this. We do this on secular college campuses a lot. And we set up a microphone for Q&A. And when atheists get up to the microphone, by the way, you can see all these interactions on our YouTube channel. Cross-Examine YouTube channel. There's over 800 short Q&A videos on there. When atheists get up to the microphone, if they express any hostility at all, I will ask them one question. Here's the question. If Christianity were true, would you become a Christian? I've had atheists stand at that microphone in front of hundreds of people and say, no. No. I thought you were reasonable. I thought you were rational. How is that reasonable? It's not. The problem isn't here. The problem's here. They don't want it to be true. They don't want there to be a God. Why? Because they want to be God of their own lives. And they think God is going to get in the way of what they want to do. They're not on a truth quest. They're on a happiness quest. And they're just going to believe whatever they think is going to make them happy. Here's the problem. You can make yourself happy over the short term doing a lot of fun things, but over the long term, it's a disaster. And ask any of your faculty members over 40, and they'll tell you, yeah, it's a disaster because many of us have tried it ourselves. If you want to get happiness and contentment, you've got to go straight through truth, and Jesus is the truth. So by the way, if you know somebody who's not a Christian and they keep giving you the stiff arm, just ask them the question, if it were true, would you become a Christian? If they hesitate or say no, the problem's not in their head, it's in their heart. They don't want it to be true. Now, let's move on to the next question. Is it true that God exists? And I mentioned there are three arguments we're briefly going to look at for the existence of God. The first argument is the argument from the beginning of the universe known as the cosmological argument. Cosmological comes from the Greek word cosmos, which means world or universe, and it says if the universe had a beginning, it must have had a beginner. The second argument is the argument from design. This is known as the teleological argument. Telos is a Greek word meaning design or purpose, and it says if there's design in the universe and design in life, such as you, then there must be a designer. Now, these two arguments have some scientific evidence behind them. The third argument doesn't have any science behind it, yet it's the argument we've all known since we were very small children, and it's the argument from morality known as the moral argument. And it says if there's one thing morally wrong out there, just one, like it's wrong to torture babies for fun, then there has to be a God. Why? Because if there is no standard beyond humanity, then everything's just a matter of opinion. That's just your opinion against a baby torturer's opinion. Or say your opinion against Hitler's opinion. Or your opinion against a racist's opinion. If there's no standard beyond us, everything's a matter of opinion. By the way, our country recognized there has to be a standard beyond us. That's why our founding document says we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men were created and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these are life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness. And governments are instituted among men not to give these rights, not to take away these rights, but to secure these rights. Governments don't give you your rights. Governments secure your rights. Because rights come from God. If there's no God, there's no right to anything. But we don't have time to look at that right now. We've got to look at the first argument, the cosmological argument. Now, you've got to admit, it was worth coming to chapel today just to see God do that. Did you see that? Let's look at that again. Some of you have said, I've never seen God move. Oh, really? Look at that. Right there. See where the God moved right there? Now, this is the argument that many say points back to the big... Now, I know some of you going, Frank, we're Christians in here. We don't believe in the Big Bang. I believe in the Big Bang. I just know who banged it. In fact, the evidence for the Big Bang is so good that even atheistic scientists are admitting it. Stephen Hawking, who was the top physicist in the world before he died a few years ago, was an atheist, and here's what he said. Almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Now, Hawking tried to come up with another explanation other than God. He failed, but he's admitting the data. What's the data? That space, time, and matter literally had a beginning out of nothing. Once there was no space, time, and matter, and then the entire universe exploded into being. Now, we're not going to look at the evidence for this. Why? Number one, we don't have time. Number two, it's all in the book. Number three, it's not controversial. Even the atheists are admitting it. So we're just going to jump to the bottom line. Here's the bottom line. If the universe had a beginning, we got two options. Either no one created something out of nothing, which is the atheistic view, or someone created something out of nothing, which is the theistic view. Now, the only question I have is which view is more reasonable? That no one created something out of nothing, or that someone created something out of nothing? Well, I was at Texas A&M, must have been 10 years ago. I put this slide up, and some atheist said, "Oh, Frank, I think number one is more reasonable." I said, "Number one? Let's look at number two for a second." Number two says someone created something out of nothing. Now, that's a miracle, right? But at least you got a miracle worker. You got someone. Number one is a miracle with no miracle worker. That's absurd. By the way, do you realize everyone believes in at least one miracle? Christians believe that someone created something out of nothing. Atheists believe that no one created something out of nothing. They're both miracles, except number two has a miracle worker. In fact, I said to the audience at A&M that night, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality. And by the way, law of causality doesn't say everything has a beginning. It says everything that comes to be has a beginning. There has to be an uncaused first cause. Aristotle knew that. Everybody since Aristotle has known that. There has to be an unmoved mover. It's either the universe or something outside the universe. Well, it looks like the universe had a beginning, so it must be something outside the universe that had a beginning. So I said to the audience that night at A&M, I said, to show you how seriously we all take the law of causality, that things don't pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause. There is nobody sitting here in this auditorium tonight who is currently worried that a hippopotamus has appeared out of nothing, by nothing, in your dorm room and is currently pooping on your pillow. Right? You don't worry about that. You're not worried that a raging Bengal tiger is just going to appear out of nothing, by nothing, right here in this auditorium and start devouring you. You don't worry that things pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause. Yet atheists are saying this happens. Well, if things pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause, why doesn't everything do so? Why don't Teslas pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? You wake up one morning, your Hyundai is a Tesla. And you go, how do I charge this thing? Why don't MacBook Pros pop into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? Could have saved me $4,000 if I was just a little bit more patient. If you're hungry one night, you want to have a pizza, does it make sense to order one? Or should you just sit in your room, wait, and hope one pops into existence out of nothing, by nothing, without a cause? No, it's the atheists that have all the faith. Now think about this, ladies and gentlemen. If space, matter, and time had a beginning out of nothing, then whatever created space, matter, and time can't be made of space, matter, and time. In other words, the cause must be spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful to create the universe out of nothing, personal in order to choose to create, because in order to create something, you have to make a choice, and only persons can make choices. Also, the being would have to be intelligent in order to have a mind to make a choice. Now, when you think about a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent cause, who do you think of? You say, God. Well, how do you know it's the Christian God, Frank? We don't. Yet. We haven't done enough research yet. This could be Allah or some other theistic being. But if we keep doing the research and we see that Jesus rose from the dead, then we can conclude that the same being that walked out of the tomb 1,987 years ago is the same being in whose divine nature created the universe out of nothing. We haven't gotten there yet, but this could be the God of the Bible. Here's a question asked an atheist, by the way. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? This is the famous question that the philosopher Leibniz asked. If there is no God, why is there something rather than nothing at all? In other words, if there is no God, why does anything exist? If nothing existed, nothing would persist existing. Yet something exists. You exist, I exist, the universe exists. So something must have always existed that brought it into existence. Now, there's a lot more in the book on the cosmological argument. We just got to spend a few minutes on the teleological argument. And this is the argument that says, not only are you designed, but the universe is designed. In fact, the universe is designed, and scientists have discovered this in the past, say, 4 or 5 decades, that the universe is fine-tuned for life. That if you were to change any one of a number of factors about the universe virtually imperceptibly, there would be no universe, and there certainly would be no life. In fact, even atheists admit this. Stephen Hawking put it this way. He said if the expansion rate of the universe was different by 1 part in 1,000 million a second after the Big Bang, the universe would have collapsed back on itself or never developed galaxies. If the expansion rate was that imperceptibly different from the beginning, none of us would be here. Now, you can't make any evolutionary sort of explanation for this. Why? Because the expansion rate did not evolve to that point. The expansion rate started there. It seems to me the same being that created the space, matter, and time out of nothing is the same being that fine-tuned the expansion rate to be precisely what it was, and it continues to be what right now. Expansion rate is actually accelerating right now. Also, the gravitational force, if it were altered by more than 1 part in 10 to the 40th power, we wouldn't be here. Now, what's 1 part in 10 to the 40th power? That's 1 part in 1 with 40 zeros following it. You say, Frank, I can't get my head around that number. Neither can I. So let me give you an illustration. Take a tape measure and stretch it across the entire known universe. That's a long way. You can't get that tape measure at Lowe's. Set the gravitational force at a particular inch mark on that tape measure. I realize gravity's not measured in inches. This is just give you a scale idea in your mind. If the strength of gravity were different by 1 inch in either direction across a scale as wide as the entire known universe, we wouldn't be here. That's 1 in 10 to the 40th precision. I don't have enough faith to believe that that value just landed there by chance. And by the way, does chance cause anything? Is chance a cause? Who caused this? Chance. He was just here. No. Chance is not a cause. Chance is a word we use to describe mathematical possibilities. When scientists use the word chance, you know what they really mean? We don't know. Look, either that value was designed or it wasn't. What's more reasonable? I think it's more reasonable to say it was designed. Now, it's not just these constants about our universe that are fine-tuned. Our solar system appears to be designed with us in mind. Let's take a look at the solar system here for a minute. All right, where we are in the solar system, right there, third rock from the sun. If we were just a little bit closer to or a little bit further away, we couldn't survive. A little bit closer to, we'd burn up. A little bit further away, we'd freeze. We are what scientists call the Goldilocks zone. It's not too hot, it's not too cold, it is, that's a lie, it's too hot here in the summer. Axial tilt, 23.5 degrees. Change that slightly, we don't exist. Earth rotation, 24 hours. Change that slightly, we don't exist. The size and distance of the moon from us, change that slightly, we don't exist. In fact, if Jupiter was not in its current orbit, we wouldn't be here. Why? Because Jupiter's gravitational force is so strong that it attracts most of the meteors and space junk to it rather than us. In fact, if you take a close-up look at Jupiter, you see these dark marks on here? Those dark marks are comet fragment strikes that are bigger than the Earth. Thank God for Jupiter. Because if Jupiter wasn't there, we wouldn't be here. In fact, take a look at the size of Jupiter. There you go. You got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Earth. Look at poor Pluto down here. You know, Pluto recently has been demoted as a planet. I don't know about you, but I think it's size discrimination. Take a look at this. You can hardly see Pluto. Take a look at this. That's Arcturus. That's another star in our galaxy. Here's the sun. Jupiter is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Earth is invisible. Pluto, forget about it. All right, keep an eye on Arcturus. Here's Arcturus right here. Where's Arcturus now? There it is right there, right of the white star Regal. That's Antares. That's another star in our galaxy. The sun is 1 pixel in size on this scale. Jupiter is invisible. Earth, Pluto, forget about them. In fact, if the Earth was the size of a golf ball, Betelgeuse here would be 5 or 6 Empire State Building's high. The heavens are awesome. And this is just in our galaxy. This is not outside of our galaxy. This is inside of our galaxy. And the average distance between stars in our galaxy is 30 trillion miles. And all that distance is necessary for us to exist here on Earth. Now, how far is 30 trillion miles? Far. Take you at least 2 tanks of gas in a Toyota Prius to go 30 trillion miles. A number of years ago, I was out in the Desert Museum in Tucson, Arizona. We took our sons out there. We're out there at night, and we're outside, and the guide says, it's so clear tonight that if we look up at 9:03, we will see the space shuttle in orbit. I said, oh, come on. We're not going to see the space shuttle in orbit. It's only 120 feet long. It's 350 miles up. We're not going to see it. Oh, me of little faith. At 9:03, the guide goes, look! We look up in the sky, about 70 degrees above the horizon. There's an object streaking across the western desert sky relative to us about like this. I mean, it's really cooking. When it got right about here, it disappeared. I don't know whether Scotty beamed it up or what. Actually, what happened was, despite the fact that we were in total darkness, the space shuttle was so high up that the sun was still reflecting off of it, and when it got out of the range of the sun, we couldn't see it anymore. Now, when the space shuttle was in orbit, the space shuttle was traveling at about 18,000 miles an hour. That's 5 miles per second. You got trouble getting to school in the morning? Take the space shuttle, right? 5 miles a second. Think about how fast that is. Well, I did a little calculation to try and figure out how long would it take us if we could get in the space shuttle and go from our star, the sun, to another star inside our galaxy, an average distance away, 30 trillion miles. In other words, how long would it take us to go 30 trillion miles if we could go 5 miles per second? It would take us 201,450 years. That means if you got in the space shuttle at the time of Christ and started traveling from our star, the sun, to another star in our galaxy, an average distance away, 30 trillion miles, you've been going 5 miles a second for 2,000 years. You'd be less than 1/100th of the way there right now. And we're going to explore space. No, we're not. We can hardly get out of our solar system. The heavens are awesome. You know, the Hubble Space Telescope, a number of years ago, trained its camera on 1/24 millionth of the sky. What's 1/24 millionth of the sky? Go outside tonight, put a piece of rice on your finger, hold it up. That piece of rice represents about 1/24 millionth of the sky. So Hubble did this. They called the results Hubble Deep Field. I'm about to show you what they found. I want to show you the video of what they found. Now, it's actually a bunch of pictures put together. There's no audio, just video of what they found in 1/24 millionth of the sky. Are you ready? Are you ready? Here we go. You're going to see the constellations in the southern hemisphere come up. There they are. Now we're going to zoom into 1/24 millionth of the sky. What you're looking at are nearly 10,000 galaxies in 1/24 millionth of the sky. February 1st, 2003, President George W. Bush goes into the East Room of the White House. It's Saturday afternoon. They turn the TV camera on. Every major network, including international networks, carry his address. Saturday afternoon, why? President looks in the camera and says, "My fellow Americans, this morning our country experienced a great tragedy. Upon re-entry into the atmosphere, the space shuttle Columbia burned up in the skies over Texas. There are no survivors. The Columbia is lost." The president then went on to quote from Isaiah chapter 40, beginning in verse 25. Why Isaiah chapter 40? Because in Isaiah chapter 40, God is speaking. And what does God say? "To whom will you compare me, or who is my equal, says the Holy One." In other words, you want a comparison? You want to know what God is like? Here's what God says. "Lift your eyes and look to the heavens. Who created all these stars and named them one by one? Because of his great power and mighty strength, not one of them is missing." The president then looked back in the camera and said, "The same God that created and named all those stars is the same God that created and knows the names of the 7 astronauts who perished today. While they did not return safely home to us, we can all now pray they've all returned safely home." You want to know what God is like? Look to the heavens. What do you see when you look to the heavens? You see more stars than there are grains of sand on all the beaches on all the earth. And to go between one star and another star just in our galaxy, going 5 miles a second will take you over 200,000 years. Psalm 103 verse 11 says, "God's love to those that fear him exceeds the height of the heavens above the earth." How high are the heavens above the earth? Infinite, from our perspective. That's the point. Now, ladies and gentlemen, is it possible that this being who created and sustains all these stars and created and sustains you. In fact, if we had time, we'd go into how he created and sustains you, but we don't. Is it possible that this being actually has a reason for some difficulty you're going through now, even if you never discover what that difficulty is or what that reason is? Of course. Now, as I say, if we had time to put all these arguments together, we would see, without opening the Bible, that we have a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, powerful, personal, intelligent, moral creator who created all things and sustains all things. We haven't even opened the Bible yet, and we have this being that looks like it could be the God of the Bible. How do we know it is the God of the Bible? Well, we'd have to go through points 3 and 4, and we don't have time for that now. But when you do go through points 3 and 4, we're going to see that somebody actually did die for you. And his name is Jesus of Nazareth. Many years ago when I was in the Navy, which by the way stands for Never Again Volunteer Yourself, I was in naval aviation, and we had to earn golden wings, which were hard enough to earn. But there's nothing like earning a golden trident. That's what the SEALs earn. Very few people that start SEAL training make it through. 5, 10, maybe 15%. But those that do get through the training, they wear that trident with pride because it is their military identity. It is their identity to everybody who sees them. When Michael Monsoor was buried in California in Rosecrans Cemetery just outside of San Diego, just about every Navy SEAL on the West Coast showed up for his funeral. And when they showed up for his funeral, they took off their tridents and they pressed him into his casket. They took their identity and put their identity in the one that died for them. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to put our identity in our Savior. But our culture tells us, no, don't put your identity in Jesus. Put your identity in your political party. Or put your identity in your spouse, or your boyfriend, or your girlfriend, or your sexual orientation, or your ethnic group, or your bank account, or your vocation, or your school, or your church. No, none of those things are ultimate, ladies and gentlemen. You were meant to put your identity in your Savior. And an eyewitness who spent his entire life with Jesus practically, John, who wrote the Gospel of John, he went with Jesus and of course lived much longer after Jesus, but he wrote this: He has given you the right to become a child of God. If you don't want to be a child of God, that's fine. You can know that He is the Savior and not trust in Him. If you don't want to do that, that's fine. God will not force you into heaven against your will. But He gives you an identity that you don't achieve, you receive. You know that Christianity is the only worldview where you don't achieve your identity, you receive your identity? There's nothing you can do to achieve it. He's done it for you already. There's no pressure. All you need to do is accept it. And why wouldn't you accept it? It's free. And He not only died for you, He also rose from the dead to prove His claims were true. Father, I pray if there's anyone here who's never accepted the free gift of salvation and the free gift of an identity in Jesus, that today would be the day. Yeah, this is a Christian school, doesn't mean everybody's a Christian. If you've never accepted that free gift, today is the day you can do it.